Where is it?
No, I can't see you. Just wait a second, okay?
Okay.
I'm streaming a show right now. Once I stream, we're going and I'll usually on camera's on, I think. You see it?
You can
Yeah.
have whatever you want to, darling. No, the world is yours. I've been
Welcome to the Sparkle Show. With us today, we did a tour through the Castle Air Museum, and it's amazing. It's incredible. I suggest you check it out if you ever are in Atwater and you want to see Air Force One, you want to see fighter jets, kamikazes. They have everything. It is so beautiful. They have 2 events a year where they open up all the planes, and I got to have a special treat where they took me through every one of them. So come on. It's out or it's not? Okay. Hello? Okay, bye. They said they can hear everything we're saying right now.
No, yeah.
My mom just called me and said they can hear everything. Okay, so tell us about where we're going to go through right now.
We're going to go through the museum grounds. We're going to start with the B-24 Liberator. This airplane flew during the Second World War, and there's only about less than 20 on display anywhere in the country, and we're very lucky to have one of them.
How big is this entire property or the whole field?
We're sitting on 38 acres, and we've used just about all of it. And
even after they closed the base?
Right.
And so tell us a little bit about that, how you've been around since 1981 here, and when did they close the base?
We closed the base in 95. Okay.
Because they have to get rid of so many.
Right, correct. And it went through the BRAC, and the government decided, the Pentagon decided to close the base and to save money. And this happened to be one of the bases that got closed. The museum survived because it went into a foundation, and so we basically went independent. Now this airplane you see in front of you is the Vulcan bomber. There's only one, and we've got it.
Okay, so this was known for the B-52 school?
Yes, this was the B-52
The
school.
only one in the country at one point.
If you were going to fly B-52s, this is where you came.
How long did that go on for?
Till 1995.
So the whole time it was open. So for 14 years, this was like where you went?
Well, no, since the 1950s. Yeah, the base has been here since the 1950s.
The base has been here since the 1950s. The museum just since 1981. Okay.
Correct. Yeah, the museum started out with 7 airplanes. And,
oh my!
Yeah, 7 airplanes, and we grew to 70.
So what's this one?
This is the B-18 Bolo, made by McDonnell Douglas, and it goes back to the 1920s. And
there's so many. I mean, where do we go?
They're everywhere.
Okay.
This airplane coming up is in restoration right now. We're putting it back together. It's called the B-58 Hustler. There's 6 of these in museums all around the world, and we have one. We got this airplane from Chanute Air Force Base 2 years ago, and we're doing some restoration work on it before we fit it and put it all back together. So then these big airplanes you see, the C-47 and the C-46, they're World War II transport airplanes.
So where's the one from like the show MASH? There's got to be one of those around here.
That one is down at the restoration hangar,
oh,
which you will see later on. Okay. There's the B-52 in all her glory.
Okay, so how old is this B-52 that we have right here?
This airplane was built in the late 1950s, and it served probably up to the mid-70s. So it's got quite a bit of hours on it. And then when the base transferred over from D's over to a newer model, G's, then we got this one from the base. So it never went to the boneyard at all.
And what are some of these smaller ones?
Okay, this is called Fighter Row, and these airplanes are Korean War vintage. Okay.
Wow. So only 2 people could really fit in there at a time, right?
Just one. Depending upon the model of the airplane, this particular one, yes, it is 2. The F-80, which is based off of this one, is a single seater that served in Korea. And then the F-84, the F-86s, those were all Korean war fighters.
So the B-52, what could you transfer in there? Because that's a larger plane. What did you guys carry in there?
Well, this is a nuclear bomber.
So it was just about, so only like about 2 people were flying, and then that's what it was carrying?
No, this airplane would fly 4 people, and maybe with a relief crew, depending upon how long the mission was. Some of these guys would fly 12, 14-hour missions.
And then it's released from the bottom? Where
Correct.
Exactly does it come? Okay.
Yes, the bomb bay opens up, and then the nuclear weapons would drop. Now, in the 60s, when the B-52 was stationed in Vietnam, they would drop conventional bombs, similar to what they did during the Second World War. But they would drop hundreds of bombs out of that bomb bay.
Out of this one?
Oh, yeah.
That's why I was like, this is bigger than I imagined, because every time you see that actually in the movies, it always seems so much more smaller than that. So I was like, you could actually store a lot in here.
Oh, yeah.
So did you drop them, were they dropped sporadically, or were they like all at once?
They were just gravity bombs. Yeah, I mean, they had tracking once you get to the point of release. Then once they released the bombs, they were kind of on their own. But the wingspan on this airplane is longer than the Wright brothers' first flight.
Wow.
Yeah. Goes from here all the way back to the second set of landing gear.
Oh my.
Right. So you can tell that that's roughly 40 feet.
So how much could this hold weight-wise?
A tremendous amount. Well over 80,000 pounds of gas. Yeah. And this is actually, the Hound Dog that you have here is actually one of the first cruise missiles. Air-launched cruise missile. So it's a missile with a jet engine.
Interesting. That must have been pretty scary to fly in there knowing what you had, because if the plane crashed, I mean, that could cause a nuclear explosion.
Yeah, we have one volunteer that has well over 600 missions in one of these airplanes in Vietnam. Yeah, he was a tail gunner.
Wow.
Yeah.
Because there was only a few people that could actually really fly these, right?
Yeah, there was quite a few people who actually flew them, but there were a lot of guys who flew B-52s and KC-135s, which was the refueling.
How many flight hours did you have to get in it before you can actually go on a mission?
Boy, you know what? I'm going to say probably at least had to have 50, before they let you take one over.
Okay, what's the significance of the Seventh Heaven?
Well, that's the name of the airplane. Okay. They named it Seventh Heaven, and then the mural is just because she's heavenly. Yeah.
So who painted that on there?
We had that mural painted on decades ago, and we've saved it. We've been able to save the whole thing every time we do a repaint. And this airplane is a C-47. And it flew during the Second World War.
The Second World. What was this transporting, and how many people could fly it in this one?
There's 2 pilots and a navigator, and they could fly anything from troops to supplies.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. My grandfather worked on these at McDonnell Douglas, or at Douglas in Santa Monica before the war.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, but yeah, it's really one of my favorite airplanes because that's what he worked on, back in the day.
How fun.
Yeah.
Okay, so you said there's 70 planes down here?
Correct. 70
Wow.
planes. Yeah. And they go from the 1920s all the way to modern day.
So what happens every year? They are like, oh, we'll put a plane in this museum, or when the museum raises more money, you guys get a new plane?
Correct. We acquire the airplanes as they come available, and there's a lot of museums that have gone out of business since the 1990s, so we've been able to acquire quite a few.
Oh, that's nice. You inherit some. Do you have to pay for them every time, or sometimes they're like they donate one?
Sometimes if they're flown in, all we have to do is pay for the demill, and then
What's that?
well, they go through, they demilitarize the airplane, took all the
okay.
seats out, and they just make it to where it can't fly anymore. This is the B-36 bomber, largest Air Force bomber ever produced.
Ever? Why? What? How large is it?
This has got a 230-foot wingspan, and it's a little over 190 feet long. It's actually bigger than the B-52. Now, this airplane is an actual Thunderbird airplane. Okay, we received it in the mid-'80s, and we got it put back in its rightful colors. And so this airplane did fly with the Thunderbirds. It was number 5.
How exciting!
Yeah. Back, and it flew in the early 70s.
So right now, are all these planes unflyable?
Correct.
There's not
They're
one
all-
that can.
Right. There's only a few that are actually flyable that they could be brought back. And one's the SR-71.
Do you think that will ever happen? Will they bring it?
No. And as we come around the corner, come to the F-16.
So can a really rich person come in here and say, I want one of these to become flyable? Let's fly it. It's impossible. It's legally.
Right. Legally.
Because they're so old, or because it'd be odd having one of those?
Correct. All the airplanes are on loan to the museum from either the Air Force, the Navy, or the Army.
So what makes this your plane?
Well, we're assigned, Carl and I are assigned
To this one. But,
We've been assigned to it since day one.
but you have to, aren't you responsible for a lot of them?
No, just the
Just this one? Oh. I figured. So this is a one-person plane?
unit.
Oh my, how fun this is! Okay, so this is the one that can do all the flips and the fun stuff, right?
This is the same airplane that the Thunderbirds use.
So what year was this?
This is a 1980. And
This model, okay. How many? What was the year span of the Thunderbirds? Like, when was the first and the last?
Well, the Thunderbirds started in the 1950s, okay, and to current day, they are still flying.
They were still flying. Okay, well, I saw that display the other day that they had at the air show. This is so neat. So what makes this model different than in the 50s? Like, what was kind of updated about this particular model?
Well, this is the 3rd generation fighter. So you went from the early jet engine technology, subsonic, and then you went into the supersonic jets. And this was this is actually the first leap forward of supersonic fighters. You know, where you have composite instead of aluminum, fly-by-wire stick. You know, you have your stick grip on that side. You got your throttle here. You know, versus traditionally your stick grip would be between your legs. Would be right here where you're.
So as far as the movies go, do they do accurate depictions? I mean, when they use this, is kind of like exactly what.
That's close.
This is close.
As close as Hollywood can make it. Correct.
As close as Hollywood can make it.
Hollywood
So
can make it. Yeah.
is that right? When did you first fall for the Thunderbirds? When was the first time you saw it and you're like,
Oh, I saw the Thunderbirds back when they were flying Phantoms back in the 70s. Actually, I saw them over in Salinas, because we lived over there, and yeah, that was really neat watching them do these things.
But it's only a one person.
This is a single seat, correct?
There's 2 seats now, so you can go up as a passenger. Because I saw that in the display on the other day.
Yes. Yeah, they make a B model, which is a 2-seat airplane.
So have you flown in the back of one in the
Yes.
B model? Was it scary? Was it fun?
It was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun, yeah. And it's not what you think it is. It's pretty cramped, you know, but you're actually strapped, you know, to the seat. So there's not a lot of moving around like you would do in an airliner, you know.
Wow.
But going upside down and doing loops and rolls and everything is really simple. So this airplane is different because it has the side stick control.
So you were volunteering here for a while. When did it? And you said you were assigned to this one from day one. Was that a choice? Did they just put you, or you're like, oh my gosh, I'll take it?
Well, because I worked on this airplane and out at the Guard, because I was there for 22 years. They asked me if I would come up and crew chief this airplane once we got it on the grounds. So I said, sure, I'll do it. And
this has been your baby ever since?
This has been, me and Carl's baby ever since.
How exciting.
Yeah. So we just went through, we just cleaned the entire cockpit. We restored all of the switches on the inside. We got a few little minor things still left to do, but yeah, it's really coming along. It's been out on the grounds now for 4 years.
And there's is this a radio just to communicate with people, or can you actually listen to music?
No, that's just strictly communication.
So Top Gun, when they had the music on, it was just
that's
Hollywood. The Hollywood, right?
That's Hollywood, yeah. That's Hollywood.
Oh, this is so awesome.
It's not as it's cramped, huh? Good thing you're thin.
So when you do these tours, do people come in to they get to sit in there too?
No.
Just me? Awesome. Okay, so how long have you been here?
Well, I was here in the Air Force in 76 to 79.
Wow.
And then I went away to fly with United Airlines for 26 years. But I've lived in Merced the whole time. So I've been a volunteer here for several years. And when we got this airplane, I was kind of attached to it. So I've been a docent on this airplane now for about 4 years.
How was it though going from the Air Force to flying commercial? I heard sometimes that can be a little bit more boring, monotonous, because you're doing all these cool planes and then it's the same. How was the adjustment?
It wasn't bad.
It wasn't bad.
Yeah, it wasn't bad. It was kind of nice.
It was a nice change of pace.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, so I enjoyed it a lot.
So what are the different kind of planes you've flown during your career?
Well, I've flown C-133s, C-123s, KC-135s, and then 727, 737, 757s, and 767s.
So what's your dream that you would like, if you could fly any plane tomorrow, what would be that?
Oh, I'd get back in a fighter. I'd fly his airplane now.
Yeah, that looks the most fun. Have you flown in the back?
No.
Really? Yeah.
So I never did any fighter except when I was pilot training.
Because he said he went in the back one time and he got to do that. So, and I saw them do that the other day, and I was like, that seems like such an experience.
It would definitely be an experience.
An Air Force One. What year is this Air Force One?
Well, this served at the 89th Airlift Wing.
The 89th. This served at the 89th Airlift Wing?
Yes, Military Airlift Wing at Andrews Air Force Base, which is the Presidential Support Unit. It was there from 1975 until 2005, and only 2 presidents served on it, and that's flew on it when they were Commander-in-Chief, but numerous other
Who were the 2 presidents?
That would have been President Reagan and President Clinton.
Wow, so this is a newer one.
This airplane was the favorite airplane for Nancy Reagan. She has the most flying time in this airplane of anybody. And of course, the Air Force isn't going to go back and study and tell us everybody that flew on the airplane, in a 30-year period, so we take what we can get.
How exciting.
Okay, so ready to go on board?
I'm ready.
Okay.
Love it. Oh, yay. And so is this the entrance that Nancy Reagan took?
This is the main entrance to the aircraft. Welcome aboard, Air Force One.
So who is specialized to fly? We have a pilot and a co-pilot.
We have a pilot and a co-pilot. All of the people that fly these airplanes go through a rigorous
Security
interview.
breach.
You know, you have to have a lot of experience, worldwide experience, and you know, so to be able to pilot one of these airplanes, because it's not more difficult to pilot, with the responsibilities, especially if you have the president on board. You essentially are responsible for his life while he's on this airplane.
What about the last minute flights and everything? Did you have a pilot all the time on hand where they just had to be prepared for, like, oh, we're going to do this happened, you know, 9/11 happened, now I have to fly here? I mean, that's a bad example. They stop flights, but another crisis where you have to go somewhere the next day. Were the pilots on hand at all times, or for this plane?
My experience is that you had to live within 20 minutes of Andrews Air Force Base.
Okay, so you do have to be on call.
I'm talking back in 1971. You had to live within 20 minutes of Andrews Air Force Base. You could not live across the river.
Okay.
So you had to be ready to fly 20 minutes after you got a phone call.
And they probably had about maybe a few on staff, or because I imagine they'd have to go on vacation or out of town at some point.
Yeah,
you can't.
You know, they have, they're going to have people ready to go. The airplanes are ready to go. You know, there's more than, you know, there are 2 747s. There were 3 of these airplanes.
Right.
You know, and then there are several other airplanes in the fleet. And
who chose for this to be Air Force One? Was it built with that intention, or it became an Air Force
the
One?
airplane was never intended to serve as Air Force One. It was intended to serve like Pentagon officials, first ladies, Pentagon officials, senators, congressmen, that was the intent when the airplane was built.
So how did it end up
That is
becoming?
pretty much why only 2 presidents actually flew on it.
Why did they choose to? I mean, how did it end up becoming an Air Force One?
The Air Force had DC-9s in the inventory at Scott Air Base, Illinois, and they served as medevac airplanes. The Navy also had a fleet of DC-9s. So they had knowledge of the capability of the airplane. And at that time, the president was flying on 707s, which required 10,000 feet of runway. But as we progressed from the 70s through the 80s, the 90s, everybody was flying more and more and more. And so now the president wanted to be able to go to smaller communities, but couldn't do it with the 707. Actually, this airplane would carry as many people as the 707 did, because the 707 had, you know, more fancy stuff with a kitchen and things like that, as opposed to this. So it wasn't until 1995 that it really became where the president used it more.
Why did Nancy Reagan favor this one so much? Was there a reason?
If you look at the tail number of the airplane, the last 2 digits are 81, and that was the year that Ronald Reagan was inaugurated. And the first 3 numbers of the airplane, and this is just kind of conjecture on our part because she didn't tell us this, but the first 3 numbers of the airplane would stand for John 3:16.
And that was her favorite verse.
So, you know, we we never got to talk to her about that.
Oh, wow.
That's just, you know, some things that
We'll just go in the little entrance way. So this is where we can have a little caucus. I love it.
this is the executive section of the airplane, and we have 10 seats in here with seat belts. There's a door at each end of it, so this could be the president's office, or it could serve as an office. It could serve as a conference room, and the couch makes into a bed, so you had that capability also.
Oh, this is so amazing. I love the photos that you guys recreated to put in here and make us feel, I feel the history now that I'm coming in here, and I love these seats, the United States of America, the Bushes. This is just, that's so awesome. The picture of the Clintons seated here.
The picture right here is kind of my favorite picture.
Do you want to come?
That is this airplane on the ground at Fresno, California in 1995. And so...
Oh, so that was in 1995, and that's, wow.
So that's the very airplane that you're standing on. So
And it's funny, it returned not far off. That is amazing. And these pictures are just so, it's fun to see people actually having fun on it, because this is like what I imagine too. It's like, is it always fun, or are these laid back moments, or it's always serious, all business? And you can see that they have laid back moments.
Oh, I'm sure if this airplane could talk, we
that would be fun.
have quite a few.
Oh yeah, this was Clinton's airplane.
The pictures you see here are pictures of people that we know have flown on the airplane, and obviously the Air Force, like I said, they're not going to research records for 30 years to tell us everybody that was on there. They've got more important things to do.
This is so amazing. I love that they could just sit here. So 3, and then they could probably easily move another seat in here. Did they do that sometimes? No. It was just always staying like this, and then you have, so you could watch yourself on the news. You could see what's, and then they could go over what they went over, how they could do it better.
I could tell you, this was a late addition to the airplane, and this came about after 9/11 because President Bush was reading to the children with the parents and the teachers and the media. And Andy Card whispered in his ear, "Mr. President, the country's under attack."
Oh my
And then
gosh.
soon thereafter, he was on Air Force One, and you and I didn't see or know where he was for 5.5 hours. So after 9/11, President Bush said, "We now have 24-hour news around the world, and I never want another president to experience what I did." And so he ordered that every airplane in the fleet would have a television. So if something happens anywhere in the world, he could see it live and not have somebody whispering in his ear.
That's horrible.
So that's where this came from.
I love the photos of Nancy Reagan in here. So was that in this Air Force One, or was that different? I see the seats are a little bit different
This
in that
was
photo.
back in the 70s when the original decor of the
Was different.
Was different. You know, it was the cotton and bright colors and everything. And now you see the blue and the gray leather. And Hillary Clinton, when she was First Lady, said, "You know, it's time that we update the fleet to modern decor."
How
So
did
that's how it
Castle, were you guys able to get this one?
Well, that's an interesting story also. They served, you know, as Air Force Ones, all 3 of them. And so when it came time to retire them, they went from Andrews to Scott Air Base in Illinois, and they were there until 2011. So now the GSA owns the airplanes, and they didn't want to send them to the boneyard to be turned into aluminum cans. So they had to decide what they were going to do. And actually they tried selling it, all 3 of them, on eBay.
Really?
That didn't go over. But then they finally decided, let's give them to museums. And so they were stored in hangars at Williams Air Force Base.
I thought you
for a
had to
couple
be,
years.
it had to be authorized to be in possession, because they were talking about the planes and what happens to them, that not a rich person could just come and acquire a plane if they want to.
These were for sale.
But they don't do that
these
anymore.
This airplane was given to us, and so we were lucky that we were the first people that they called and said, "Would you like
That's
to have
amazing.
like to have this airplane that served as Air Force One?" Well, who's going to say no?
But they no longer do that where they're for sale anymore, right? Or
I don't think so. I think this was a special.
because I asked if we could do that, if we could just go, if a rich person come in here, buy one of these planes and say, "Hey, I want it up and running for like my birthday or something," but that's impossible, right?
Right. I mean, you know, and we didn't get it up and running. We had to spend a lot of time, you know, with maintenance and everything, and get it certified with the FAA for a one-time flight to bring it to
Just to
Castle.
bring it here. What's your experience like when you come in here and you clean it and you take care of it? Because this is your responsibility, is this plane.
It's not my responsibility, but I'm one of the docents that does the tours.
You got the keys to you're one of the few people that have the keys to this plane, though.
Right.
So every time you were in here, I mean, you just think about what happened there and the history, and is it, I mean...
Oh, certainly. Yeah, you know.
Every time you get a little excited.
There's so much history here.
Do you bring your
And
family in here?
That's true of Castle.
That's true of Castle. Do your family come in here and did they take it in? Like, do any of the kids or?
No, you know, my wife and I, we don't have children, but you know, she's been on it. But you know, basically, it's open for tours on the weekends and special days.
But you get to bring some history to people. You get to bring people a special day and a special experience. It's got to be
It's a
rewarding.
lot of fun, you know, because how many people get to go on an airplane, Air Force One? You know, you have to be invited to do that. And
Well, I'm very privileged that you guys let us in here today. So what's that phone used for? Was that just for the president?
okay, this is a secure phone, and there are several through the airplane. There's one here, there's one over here, there's one back behind in the other
So he's
cabin.
always sitting by one typically. The president always needs to be sitting by a secure phone.
Right. And so when he picks that phone up, it connects to the airborne communication specialist in that little section of the airplane up front there. And he has the ability to connect the president or whoever's sitting in this seat to anybody in the world.
Pentagon,
and do it quickly.
yeah.
You know, so if the president wants to talk to his wife, he makes it happen. If he wants to talk to somebody at the Pentagon, he makes it happen. If he wants to talk to a world leader in Russia or Iraq or whatever, he is the person that makes it happen, and it happens very quickly.
This was the day before cell phones, so it's super fascinating.
It was advanced for its time, yes. Very advanced.
Wow, so how many people could be on here
So this
at one
airplane
time?
has 46 seats on board, and this portion of the airplane is the main cabin, and the folks that you would find seated back here are going to be additional aides to the VIPs that are sitting in the executive section. You're going to have additional security people, especially when you have the president, vice president, first lady on board. And then you have the press corps, and if there's any room left over, invited guests. So that's who was seated back here. This is essentially a DC-9-32, and when these were manufactured down at Long Beach, California, these three airplanes were in the center of that. So the airplanes in front of them were for airlines. The airplanes behind them on the production line were for airlines. And so these airplanes in commercial service had no first class. The seats were smaller than this, and there were 2 an aisle and 3 seats over here, and some of the airplanes had a capacity of over 100 people. So when you look around, you know, with us in here, imagine 100 people in here. So it was, so all of the seats are essentially first class. The pitch has been increased between them. So, and you can see, we even have, at the age of the airplane, it has 110 volt electricity, and where you can plug your computer into the Ethernet.
How many miles does this plane have on it?
Oh, that we don't have any idea.
Really?
It doesn't have that many, because they weren't used, you know, as often as a commercial airplane would be used. So if you compare this to an airplane commercial service, this would be like a new one almost.
But this went out of the country. You said, did it go to Moscow and like other places, or
It
that
did.
we? Yeah.
It did, but it didn't do it nonstop. So this
Okay, I see what you
airplane-
mean.
This airplane, you know, if it went to Europe, would be island hopping, empty to get there. And again,
Right,
because
okay.
if you've been to Europe, most of the airports, especially in those days, were very small runways. Yeah, so that's how that happened. This airplane, the range of it, it could not go coast to coast with a load of people and everything.
So tell us a little bit about the back of the plane. We'll travel back.
So in the back of the airplane is the galley, and of course on a ship or an airplane, the galley's the kitchen. These 2 seats right here are kind of special because they're different from everybody else's. And we found out that these 2 seats were reserved for the air police. And so when this airplane flew somewhere and everybody gets off, they secure the airplane.
When everybody's off and they do the...
So they're responsible for the security of the airplane. So if the airplane would spend the night, they get to spend the night.
Wow.
Everybody on this airplane, and just like any Air Force One, were served with china, crystal, and silver. And this is the china cabinet, which
Oh my.
was stocked with 50 place settings of china. So this galley is a little different. It's a lot different than the galley that you find on a commercial airplane.
These were the dishes that were served, I imagine.
These pictures you're seeing here are pictures of food that would be served on Air Force One today. And the 747 has 2 full-size kitchens, but look at the size of the plates. And if you look at our kitchen, see our giant microwave, we have 2 coffee makers, 10-cup coffee makers, and we have a convection oven that has 6 shelves, but they're very small. So there's no way you're going to prepare this kind of food on this airplane. You would have nice food and everything. But so when you fly today, everything's paper and plastic, and they collect it and they throw it away.
Right.
On this airplane, everything's china, crystal, and silver. It doesn't get thrown away. So a lot of this is storage, and specialty storage. So I like to show, you won't find that on a commercial airplane for your silverware. And here is to keep the crystal stemware from rattling and breaking.
What was served here? Because if they didn't have the kitchen in here, what were they serving on fine china?
It would be nice food, but it would be simple. It wouldn't have to be,
Something that could be microwaved.
totally prepared on this,
Okay.
So, I would say that for breakfast you were probably going to have coffee, juice, and pastries or something like that. For lunch would probably be some kind of a sandwich or salad or something like that.
So have you met some of these pilots for the Air Force One?
Only 1 or 2, and we have the gentleman here that lives in Madeira, and he was the factory representative for Douglas for 5 years for these 3 airplanes when they were there. So he has given us a lot of knowledge about it. We have a gentleman that lives in Winton who now has a computer business, and he was a mechanic at Andrews on these airplanes and all of the airplanes, for 7 years. And so we find out when President Obama took his family to Yosemite a couple of years ago, we had Air Force One, the 747 here at Castle for a couple of days, and we had 10 crew members off of that airplane that came and visited us, and so you get a wealth of knowledge from those people. One of them had actually served on this airplane. So.
Wow, that's so incredible. Thank you so much for taking us on this
you're
journey.
welcome.
Okay, so tell us what you do here at the Castle Air Museum.
Well, I have the honor and privilege of being the executive director, which means I kind of oversee the daily operation, which includes staff, it includes all of our volunteers. We are now in our restoration hangar, which aircraft come in, if they come in pieces that are not flown in, trucked in, they're reassembled here, restored here prior to them going out.
If you want to become a volunteer here, do you guys look for more volunteers? Is that something, how do you apply?
Well, that's a constant. People can apply through our website. They can also call us.
You have to be knowledgeable on stuff there. I can't be a volunteer.
Anybody could be a volunteer. We have a dedicated group of fine gentlemen here that can learn anybody on this.
Do they want someone like me that doesn't know anything? Be like, oh, this, what's that? Oh, that's the library.
Well, you can run a sander. You can do all sorts of things. You know,
Because it'd be a great learning experience. I mean, I would think.
True. It becomes a labor of love.
What's the youngest you could be a volunteer?
Somebody who's 17, 18.
Because I would think you'd get some.
All the way up to, we have people in their 80s who are volunteers.
I just know there's a lot of kids with such passion. I have one kid in mind I think would just love to be a volunteer here.
Oh,
so.
sure. You know, it teaches a lot about hands-on mechanics, fabrication, paint. I mean, it's a whole plethora of things that they can.
Do you ever have classes here?
We do have a internship program with UC Merced.
Yeah, okay.
With their School of Engineering. And normally we would be just wrapping that up now. However, the COVID-19 put a kibosh on it, but next semester we will probably have a series of students in here. As a matter of fact, there are about 35 that come in, and there's more that apply. We just don't have the capacity to take more than about 30 or 35 per semester. A lot of them have put that on employment applications, and have really gotten hired on by Lockheed Martin and Northrop Grumman because of, wow, you actually punched rivets and you did this and you worked on aircraft, you're hired. So
that is so cool. So restoration, this is where everything pretty much has to come here when it first arrives at the base.
This is very true, yeah.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about what we're seeing in here. This is the stuff that just came?
These are actually, this is an aircraft here. It's an F-102 Delta Dagger.
Okay.
It is a former California Air National Guard airplane. This came to us in 2005 from Chino, California. So it's in for a renovation. It came in off of the display areas.
It's been here this whole time, since 2005?
No, outside it's been.
Oh,
but we brought it in about a year ago because it needed a paint job, and the weather tends to beat them up a little bit outdoors.
Yeah, especially here.
So they're moved in. They're gone through completely. Any metal panel that's corroded will be remanufactured, replaced, riveted on correctly, and then gone through a repaint, and then it's rolled back out onto the grounds.
How often do you usually have to restore these? I mean, is this every year kind of you bring them, every 5 years?
I would say about every 12, 15 years.
Oh, that's not bad.
It's not too bad. We are in an area that is humidity-wise a drier climate.
Exactly. I imagine it takes some more
If we were near the coast, heaven forbid, these would be dust because of the salt air corrosion. Right here we have a somewhat rare drone. This is a drone that's designed and flew at 3 times the speed of sound. It was made to fly off of the A-12 and the Blackbird reconnaissance plane that you saw of the presidential aircraft. Didn't work too well. They had an accident with it. However, this actually was flown on missions and launched from B-52 bombers, like underwing pylons. They flew over China and were meant to take reconnaissance pictures, flying very high and at 3 times the speed of sound, which is somewhere around 2,100 miles an hour.
How old is this one?
Oh, this goes back to the late 60s, probably.
This particular model?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, these were made by the same company, the Lockheed Skunk Works down in the Burbank area, and they were made to recover data during the Cold War, so we could assess that. You see here, there's an engine pod on. I'm not sure if Bill showed you the B-58 out on the grounds. It's kind of
we drove through that.
Yeah, this is one of the engine pods. You see a lot of work going on here with. There's plates back here, so when you put the screw through, it automatically goes into what they call a nut plate. A lot of work being done on that.
What about the astronauts?
Oh, well, let's
and this is exciting how aviation, NASA, this is where it kind of comes together. I think this is really fascinating.
It does. And, when you look at it, we are not more than 100 years, we're a little bit more than 100 years since man's first powered flight. But when you look at these airplanes were maybe 50 years after man's first powered flight at Kitty Hawk. So this particular airplane right here is the first Air Force mass-produced supersonic fighter aircraft. This is 1955-56 right here.
Okay.
Now this went to NASA, right after it was accepted by the Air Force, and went down to Edwards Air Force Base, which is where what they call the Dryden facility for NASA. So if you see these orange boxes, those are data recorders in there for experiments that NASA was doing on the flight of this aircraft. So if you look at the tail, you look at, these are the NASA colors. So this particular aircraft, we've had some people do some exhaustive research, and we have pretty solid documentation that people like Neil Armstrong, the first man on the moon, flew this aircraft at Dryden at Edwards Air Force Base. Gus Grissom, who was killed in a fire in an Apollo astronaut program, was killed in a capsule fire. So the history of this is quite steeped, and it's basically hallowed ground. So we're very, very lucky to have it, and you can see it's been brought in again because it was out for about 15 years, and it had some issues, needed to be brought in and completely gone through. So.
And I heard there's some writings in there from some of the astronauts. Have you guys found some original writings?
There may be.
Your friend over there had told us that there were some writings found from that. So that's all you knew, like Neil Armstrong.
Yeah, that I don't. That I can't verify.
Well, we'll go talk to him about that.
But I do know the restoration crew, when they restored it in 2004, signed their names in there. We do get people, pilots that will fly an airplane in, like the Tomcat out there, the F-14. When the pilot and his reconnaissance or radar intercept officer flew the airplane in 2005, they actually signed their name in the cockpit. So we clear coded that because that's part of history.
Nice. Mm-hmm. So what did they think about this when they had this there for that long? I mean, because it took quite a while for it to get to here.
It did.
So what were they doing the whole time there? Was this...
They would flight test this. They would flight in various attitudes, various speeds, and pass that data on to be used in the design of future aircraft. Now, it spent a lot of time at NASA. It actually ended its NASA life at Moffett Field over near Sunnyvale. And in 1972, it was towed to San Jose State University to be used at their aeronautics research division, which aeronautic majors used. The only thing they used the airplane for was hydraulic testing, and in the early 2000s, the college was downsizing that department, so they knew that we were interested and they offered the aircraft to us. So lo and behold, here it comes, and I happen to know an air traffic controller at San Jose International Airport at the time, and he was saying, "Where did that F-100 go?" And I said, "I'm glad you asked. It went to Castle Air Museum," because he had a lot of airline pilots that would look over and ask, "Where'd that airplane go?" So
that's incredible.
Yeah, so it's kind of a long and twisting story, but that's the case with a lot of the aircraft out here.
The history, I mean, they've been alive longer than us, some of these planes, so that's why they would have a long and twisted story.
Yeah, they do. They do, these are 50s era aircraft.
I see you guys take a lot of time in the restoration, and since they're not flyable, what's the point? Do you just want the engines to look like for the sake of showmanship, for the sake of teaching people? Because I see you keep everything right. You're so tedious on all of this.
Well, the goal is to make it look like it's still flyable.
Okay.
And as historically correct as possible, and we are the teachers of history.
Right.
So if something is incorrect, then we're not doing our job. Our job is to have it replicate and look as it did on that flight line, with as many of the original instruments and parts possible. And in some cases, we have to fabricate that. Because, let's say if this airplane needed something, it's an airplane that, parts haven't been made for in decades.
Yeah, so, I imagine.
Believe it or not, there are a lot of sources out there where we find things, and it may be in Texas, or it may be in Southern California, or New Mexico, or Idaho. It just depends what warehouse may have this, and it's surprising. Sometimes you'd be surprised what you can find on eBay.
So how long have you been here at Castle?
My involvement started back in, I believe, late 1987 as a volunteer.
Oh, so you've been here a while.
And then it was kind of funny because I was asked to be a board member, and that was in the early 90s, and I was congratulated the night of and said I brought everybody's average age down by 35 years at the time. But it's been a rewarding experience, and in 2005 I submitted a resume. I said, basically, you know who I am, you know I can do different things, give me a shot. And I was hired in early 2006, and here I am. So I did a lot with in the early 2000s with aircraft acquisition, recovery, funding. I fundraised a lot, which I still fundraise a lot. A lot of people don't know. Some people think we're supported by the government. We're not.
I was
we
told
are
that.
a private, self-funded entity, not for profit, and so it is a constant battle. To find the dollars, to find the interest, the support. We are really would like to bring a lot of these aircraft undercover. In a building type of thing. So we have some options. We do have a very generous member who's offered $1 million match, which is on the table. So if any of your viewers out there, or 10 of them, want to kick in on that, we can match that $1 million and start to bring these indoors out of the elements. Once they're out of the elements, there's no more having to bring them in and out and continually restore. So that's what we're shooting for. We become an all-weather venue, and we can have hands-on exhibits for kids to come and learn, how airflow acts over a wing or something like that.
What were some of the most exciting guests that you've seen in all your time here? Because you've been here a while. I know I was with Jim Patterson. I was a lot. That's and that.
Sure, Jim Patterson, great guy. We've had people, veterans, Colonel Bud Anderson, who is 98 years young now, flew with Chuck Yeager during the war, World War II, was a very highly decorated triple fighter ace. He's been here several times. We have had, I had the test pilot of a very futuristic bomber during the 60s, the XB-70 Valkyrie was here. We've had political guests, Assemblyman Gray, Congressman Costa, it just kind of goes on and on. But the people you meet, sometimes unexpectedly, are very, very, it's very rewarding.
That's incredible. So you have this $1 million donor, so we need to get $1 million together so they can match it?
We do.
Wow, we've got to get on some work. We have some ideas coming up too. So when you guys are up and running, beyond this, what's going on right now, what are the days? I know the Memorial Day weekend and Labor Day weekend is when most of the planes are open and we can do that. Right.
And we are open, but our Memorial Day event, our open cockpit, unfortunately, due to the coronavirus things and social distancing, has been canceled. However, our other open cockpit, which is Saturday, September 12th, will be a huge day. And usually about 40 of the aircraft are open for viewing.
Amazing.
And you have, knowledgeable docents, like Bill and Carl, for instance, that are at the airplane that can tell you all about it. You can peek in the inside. You can see what makes the airplane work. So that's a huge day for us, one of our largest fundraisers of the year. We also have a fundraiser coming up on September 19th, which is a dinner fundraiser with a very highly decorated Vietnam War fighter ace named Randy Duke Cunningham. He's coming out from Arkansas. The book signing, but it's a fundraiser to raise funds for an F-4 Phantom that's painted all black. It's a very famous Navy airplane stationed at Point Mugu down by Oxnard. And it had the white Playboy bunny on the tail. It was a squadron commander's airplane, and they actually had to get permission from that entity to use that on the airplane. So we're raising money to get that airplane. It's a one-of-a-kind paint job, so it's very unique.
Oh, my.
After that, we have a wine and beer tasting festival on the grounds, October 10th, and that's called Corks and Kegs.
I'm there. Let's do this.
And that's a joint fundraiser with us and the local Kiwanis that meets here. So yeah, we have a number of things that are coming up, and then
So on the regular, when you want to bring your child here to view the exhibits in the museum, what are the days and times you guys are open on a normal time? Not
normal
right now.
is 7 days a week.
Really?
And it's 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. every day.
Oh, that's
We do
great.
take our last admission at about 3:15 or so in the afternoon.
That's amazing. So people that are in town to visit family or vacation, that's super accommodating.
Oh, absolutely. And then the presidential aircraft is open, weather permitting, every Saturday and Sunday.
Okay.
Yeah, from 10
That
to
is
3.
really good to know. And then,
yeah.
as far as the fundraising, I mean, this is great. We're so lucky to have such a historic.
And it's right here. You know, this is the largest collection of military vintage aircraft that you'll see on the West Coast. Wow. So, you know, other museums have military aircraft, but they also have commercial aircraft and general aviation aircraft.
Right.
So it's a whole, but this is solely
the
military
special.
aviation. Yeah.
Love it. Well, except for the Air Force One.
Well, yeah, true.
But this is so fun. Thank you so much.
My pleasure, Sparkle. Thank you. Hope you come back and see us soon.
Oh, I'm going to be for beer and what was it called? The kegs?
Corks and Kegs.
Corks and Kegs. I'm going to be here for that.
October 10th.
October, my
Saturday.
calendar.
Good. Very good. Yeah.
Carl, this is the inside of the Castle Air Museum. So tell us about some of these lovely fixtures. This is what a lot of us are wearing nowadays.
Sure.
This is the original.
Old artifacts.
Tell us about the
World War
mask.
I. That's a gas mask because they were using mustard gas in World War I.
But were they ever wearing this inside the planes? I know when they were dumping the bombs and stuff. Was it something?
That's infantry.
That's infantry. Okay.
Yep. So that's Army and whatnot.
So that was just. But you have planes to sold, so now we can
Right.
get the visual of what was going on down
Right.
here when we were out
Yes.
there. Okay. Tell us about this area.
Just various things, just exhibits. Some stuff from the chapel that was here on base and whatnot.
Are these the people that passed away while, or they were the ones that flew the planes?
I really don't know. These are provinces who lost their lives, so I am
On
assuming
that, and
these
so all
are-
that's what when it said dedication. That's what I thought.
Right. Okay. There's
The end of an era.
end of an era. That's the base chapel right here. And Bill and I were privileged. We were here to attend the last service that they had in the chapel back in '94 when they closed the base then. And so here's some uniforms from World War II.
And this is so neat. This is where they put the manuals.
Mm-hmm.
This is all. And this looks so good. I mean, you could tell this was.
Right. CBI, China Burma.
And I
India.
love that name has like worn off. That you guys
Mm-hmm.
did try to restore it because that adds to the vintage. Just so neat.
Well, painted on leather and whatnot.
We got another gas mask. I'm telling you this. This is the past, and
Yeah,
now
this
this is
is,
our future.
This is an oxygen mask for a pilot and whatnot.
So that's the one. Okay.
That is an oxygen
This is the
mask.
right one.
Yes.
Okay, I get it now.
And American flyers loved to get a hold of a British oxygen mask because
Why?
the Brits put chamois. You know, the stuff you can mop your car up with. It's sheepskin, very soft sheepskin, and they put that on the inside. And so it was comfortable. Ours didn't have that, and that thing would chafe after a couple of hours. And you were up there for 8, 10
gosh,
hours. And
yeah.
so,
I think we're all learning how uncomfortable it is to wear a mask all day, so we can
bet.
only imagine what that's
the
like.
hot ticket was to get a British air mask because it was much more comfortable to wear. Jimmy Doolittle. He commanded the group of B-25 bombers who flew off the deck of the Hornet in April of '42 to bomb Tokyo.
And Stephen King created this display.
Where do you see?
Doolittle Ray display and arrangement like
Yes,
Stephen King.
not the author.
Not okay.
Not the
Different
author.
Stephen
No,
King.
Yes.
That was interesting.
Right.
Okay, so this is exciting. Where Hollywood meets Atwater. So tell us about the making of this Natalie Wood film.
I wasn't born yet. So as the sign says, it was filmed here, or at least portions of it were filmed here. And you can see in that picture next door to Natalie Wood on nose of that airplane, the city of Turlock, which is just up Highway 99 from here.
This is so incredible. That's very interesting that so much history has not only happened with all the planes that are now here, but now there's actually a lot of history being created here, and that's got to be really exciting. Did you like the film? Don't tell me you didn't see it.
Oh, sure, I've seen it several times. We like it more for the footage, you know, of vintage footage of back in the day, in the late 50s, you know.
We should do a showing here sometime. That would be cool.
I don't know if it's available, if the girls have some copies that are available in the gift shop or not.
We could do a viewing. That would be so fun to watch it where it's made. And explain this display.
Well, this is First Lieutenant William P. Correa, and this was his airplane right here. And so this is a 1/48 scale model of a B-24.
Which we have out there.
Which we do have one of them like that.
I think we did get the footage of that.
You can see that that engine was obviously battle damaged, and so when they came home, they skidded off the runway into the grass and the mud, and you have to get a tractor to tow them out.
This was the one with the long wingspan, right?
Yes, called the Davis.
Because you have two
wing.
long wingspans out there. Is this the longest or the second longest?
I would have to consult a book to see which was longer. That was longer. The B-24 had a longer wingspan than a B-17 compared to a B-29. I'd have to check that. But that wing was built for cruising long range. It was a little delicate though, so it didn't take a lot of battle damage, whereas a B-17 could take a lot of damage and still keep going.
And that was the one that could actually hold a lot more weight.
That would hold more bombs than a B-17.
Oh!
But the wing was designed for cruising, therefore long range. Engineering is compromise. It's a trade-off.
And tell us about that.
Some more uniforms.
And another gas mask.
That's another oxygen mask.
Another oxygen mask.
If it's got a hose coming off of it,
it's the oxygen, the gas.
The oxygen mask.
Okay, so Air Force One. We got the special Air Force One China.
Mm-hmm. Which you probably saw some of the other stuff on board.
So there's still China on there too? You didn't show us the China. He showed us where they store the China cabinets.
Yes.
So explain us. I didn't even know they made a special one for that. That's so awesome.
Oh, yeah.
And then you have the special Air Force One pillow.
Oh yeah. And little things like that, we have to be very careful because stuff like that can disappear. Sticky fingers and so forth. And so nice things like this we don't normally set out.
I'm not going to lie. I would love to have one of those in my bedroom instead of in here.
Yeah.
Look. No, but I'm so glad you guys have preserved all this stuff. I mean, when you look at everybody can come and enjoy it. I'm really glad that you guys work so hard to make sure this all stays safe and stays good. I wouldn't steal it. I would just try on the clothes. That's really, I want to try on all these jackets. I got to be honest with you. That's the one I'd be like, oh, let me get this out. Let me take a picture with it on. That'd be my thing. Over here, we got the Nazis over here. Tell us about the Nazis.
Well, there's a German uniform. Okay. Judging by the color, I'm going to guess it's Luftwaffe because it's kind of a bluish gray.
Well, it's cool. This looks very original. Like everything you guys have preserved around here.
It's the real deal. Yeah, it's chewed up.
Wow.
Yeah. So you got a real Luger. That little pistol back in the corner of the shelf right there. A Luger. Pistol.
Is that the one they used when they lined them up and shot all of them at the same time?
That was just one of the types that they used.
And how you get this uniform looks super intact. That's
it is.
Very good job on preserving that.
Which is kind of amazing because a lot of that was wool, and so moths and whatnot would get after those as the years went by.
Like I said, never give me the keys to this. I'd be trying everything on.
that would be World War I, a uniform. You can tell by that collar on the top of that jacket right there. You can tell that's World War I style.
So well preserved.
And ladies, WASP, the Women's Air Service, or what was that? Forget now. Because there was another one, the MAAF.
That looks my size.
Okay.
Like I said, never give me keys.
Oh man.
And this one, these are all donations. If you think about the inside of the museum, most of these are donations.
Sure, yes.
Did you guys search because you wanted each era?
Sometimes we do. You know, we go looking for stuff. This is a link trainer. So you would sit in this and they would put the canopy down and...
How small was that? Because I'm very small and I feel like these are tight quarters for me.
Right.
Is this like being a jogger? You got to be a certain size to be in here?
Sometimes, yes. Right. So here's just a couple of pictures of what it would look
I
like.
mean, he was like an average sized man, so.
That's a flight simulator.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
But this is a
Early
small.
flight. Yes.
They don't make him this small anymore. So this is back. This looks.
Link trainer.
This is 1920s.
Link trainers were introduced in 1933. Army Air Corps started using them around 1934. So this would have been dirt common during World War II. So before you went flying in the real thing, you would start in one of these. So if
do
you
your
had
hours.
vertigo or stuff like that,
Which
it's like, okay, if you can't survive this,
You
then
can't go
you're
out
not-
there.
you're not- you would wash out of the program. General Frederick Castle.
he died in 1944.
Yes, so he was killed during the war.
So who decided to name it after him? Was he local in the area?
Congress.
Yeah, it takes an act of Congress to do stuff like that.
And they have a military base. It's an act of Congress.
So they were.
Right.
So he was a very special man. So he was killed while leading the air division of B-17s.
Yes. He was flying a combat mission.
We have the B-17s out there.
Yes, we do. Here's a 50 caliber machine gun. 50 means the projectile is a half of an inch
Again,
wide.
don't give us the keys.
The firing pin has been removed.
Wow, look at those bullets. That is some heavy
They're
artillery.
big.
Heavy artillery. So how many bullets are in these? In one
Well,
of these?
it just depends on how big your ammo box is. And those links could then be reloaded again when you would get back to the base. You know, they
So
would
how much
stuff-
was this? Do you think was in this?
Oh, there's lots.
Not more than it's about 100. You think? If you had to
Easily.
guess,
Easily.
you think there might be 200 in there?
Easily. Yes.
So then you go out, you shoot your rounds, but then you reload them later.
And then you can reload them. That's what a cockpit of a B-52 looks like. Kind of like an airliner. And all of those gray-handled knobs in the middle, those are throttles for the engines.
What is this you're replicating of the B-52? Which your model is this kind of? I
I think this was a G. This was one of the later versions.
It seems like there's more going on here than you had in earlier models.
Colonel McIntosh, retired in '68 out of Castle. He was a B-52 pilot for 4 years. He was an instructor pilot. After that, he flew missions
And he
over
was
South Vietnam from Guam.
Scotland.
And so McIntosh, he was of Scottish descent. Okay. I'm guessing he was probably a member of the St. Andrews Society, which is for Scottish people of, or Americans of Scottish descent. It's like a big club, yeah. I knew a guy who was like that. Donnie's father-in-law.